I had been looking forward to my 28th birthday for weeks. Finally, a reason to celebrate after months of hard work and a recent promotion at the tech company. I bought champagne, planning to share my success with my family over dinner. Walking through the front door with a smile, I never expected to find my parents and sister waiting with stern faces and packed boxes. My birthday surprise being told I had 24 hours to get out. Before I dive into this heartbreaking story, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe if your family has ever betrayed you when you least expected it. I grew up as the only son in the Walker family, living in a suburban neighborhood where everything looked perfect from the outside. Our two-story colonial house, with its manicured lawn and white picket fence, was the embodiment of the American dream. But behind closed doors, our family dynamic was far from ideal. My father, Harold, was a corporate attorney known for his attention to detail and uncompromising standards. At home, these traits manifested as rigid expectations and constant criticism. Nothing I accomplished was ever good enough. A 98% on a test would be met with questions about the missing 2% rather than congratulations. My mother, Diana, had once been a school teacher before giving up her career to become a full-time homemaker after my sister was born. She was always caught between supporting her children and appeasing my father. More often than not, she chose the latter, standing silently by during my father's tirades or offering empty platitudes afterward instead of real protection. Then there was my older sister, Stephanie, 3 years my senior and the clear favorite in our family. Her academic achievements were celebrated lavishly, while mine were expected. Her career in finance was a source of pride for my parents, especially my father, who never missed an opportunity to mention her latest bonus or promotion at family gatherings. Meanwhile, my work in technology was dismissed as playing with computers. My childhood was marked by constant pressure to excel. While other kids played sports for fun, I played to win scholarships. While others took classes they enjoyed, I took advanced placement courses to boost my college applications. Everything was about achievement and living up to the Walker family name. The rare moments of approval from my father were contingent on exceeding expectations, making his love feel conditional and tenuous. After graduating from college in 2008, I faced the harsh reality of a job market decimated by the financial crisis. With limited options and mounting student loan debt, I reluctantly moved back into my parents' house. What was supposed to be a temporary arrangement stretched into years as entry-level salaries barely covered living expenses in our high-cost area. Despite living under their roof, I contributed significantly to household expenses. I paid rent that was only marginally below market rate, covered my share of utilities, and often more. I purchased groceries, handled yard work, and took care of home repairs my aging father could no longer manage. Yet there was always an undercurrent of resentment, as if my presence was a burden rather than a contribution. Throughout these challenging years, my friendship with Jake was my lifeline. We had met in a computer science class during sophomore year of college and connected instantly over our shared love of coding and vintage video games. Unlike everyone else in my life, Jake never measured my worth by my achievements or financial status. After graduation, while I moved back home, Jake took a risk on a startup that eventually paid off. He secured a comfortable position at an emerging tech company and repeatedly tried to convince me to apply there as well. The company was known for its innovative approach and positive work culture. Completely different from the soul-crushing corporate environment where I had found temporary employment. During our weekend gaming sessions, or late-night calls, Jake would gently point out the toxic patterns in my family relationships. He was the first person to use words like emotionally manipulative and financial abuse to describe my situation. At first, I defended my family, making excuses for their behavior, or downplaying the impact it had on me. Deep down, I still craved their approval and held on to the hope that one day I would do something impressive enough to earn their unconditional love. Eventually, after a particularly bad argument with my father over my career choices, I took Jake up on his offer. He referred me for a software developer position at his company, and I secretly began the interview process. After multiple rounds of technical assessments and interviews, I received the job offer with a salary that exceeded my expectations. For For the first time, financial independence seemed within reach. The new position proved to be transformative. Without the cloud of family disapproval hanging over me, my creativity and skills flourished. Within 6 months, I was assigned to lead a small team on a promising new project. My contributions were recognized and valued by both peers and management. As my confidence grew, so did my determination to build a life completely separate from my family. I began saving aggressively, setting aside a significant portion of each paycheck in a separate account my family knew nothing about. I remained diligent about contributing to household expenses to avoid confrontation, but every dollar beyond that went toward my escape fund. I researched neighborhoods, mortgage requirements, and first-time homebuyer programs. In quiet moments alone, I would browse real estate listings, imagining the freedom of having my own space. By the time my 28th birthday approached, I had received news of a promotion to product manager. The salary bump and bonus would accelerate my timeline for moving out. I decided my birthday dinner would be the perfect occasion to share this news with my family. Despite years of disappointment, some childlike part of me still hoped they would be proud that this achievement might finally be enough to earn their recognition. The morning of my birthday, I woke up feeling genuinely optimistic. The promotion email had arrived, officially confirming my new role and compensation package. I treated myself to breakfast at my favorite coffee shop before heading to work, where my team had decorated my desk with balloons and a card signed by the entire department. During lunch, Jake and a few colleagues took me out and presented me with a smartwatch I had been eyeing for months. Throughout the day, my phone buzzed with birthday messages from friends, former classmates, and distant relatives. Noticeably absent were messages from my immediate family. I told myself they were probably planning something for when I got home, maybe even a surprise party. On my way back, I stopped to pick up a chocolate cake and a bottle of expensive wine to celebrate both my birthday and my promotion. As I pulled into the driveway that evening, I noticed all the lights were on in the house, which seemed promising. Taking a deep breath, I gathered the cake box and wine, mentally rehearsing how I would announce my good news. The moment I stepped through the front door, however, I sensed something was off. There was no birthday banner, no balloons, not even the smell of a home-cooked meal. Instead, my father, mother, and sister sat stiffly in the living room, an unusual formality for a weeknight. Next to the staircase, I spotted several cardboard boxes and my old suitcase from college. I stood frozen in the entryway, cake box growing heavy in my arms. My mother avoided eye contact. My sister examined her manicure. My father cleared his throat and gestured toward the empty armchair across from him. With growing unease, I set down my purchases and took the indicated seat. "We need to talk about your living situation, Benjamin," my father announced, without preamble or birthday wishes. "Frank Stephanie's fiancé will be moving in next month. We need your room." I blinked in confusion. My room. The converted attic space I had been using since returning home after college. The room I had personally renovated, insulated, and furnished with my own money. Before I could formulate a response, my father continued explaining that I was 28 years old now, and it was time I lived independently. The decision had been made. I had until tomorrow evening to remove my belongings. Any items left behind would be donated or discarded. The shock rendered me momentarily speechless. When I finally found my voice, it emerged as a strangled whisper. "Tomorrow, you are giving me 1 day." On my birthday, my father remained unmoved by the timing. "Your age is precisely why we chose today." 28 is well past the time most young men have established their own households. The initial shock gave way to a surge of anger. I reminded them of my financial contributions to the household over the years. The rent I had paid faithfully each month. The new roof I had helped finance last year. The countless repairs and improvements I had made to the property. If I had been a tenant with a formal lease, this kind of eviction would be illegal. My sister Stephanie rolled her eyes at what she called my dramatic reaction. "This has been the plan for months, Benjamin. We just waited until you were officially 28. Consider it your push into adulthood." The casual cruelty of her statement hit me like a physical blow. This premeditated eviction had been planned for months, Yet no one had given me any warning. No one had considered that I might need time to find appropriate housing. No one had thought about how this would affect my life. My mother remained silent throughout the exchange, her eyes fixed on her clasped hands. When I looked to her hoping for some support, or at least acknowledgement of the unfairness, she simply murmured that it was for the best, and that I would understand someday. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of frantic packing and phone calls. As I sorted through my possessions deciding what to take and what to leave, I discovered an old folder of financial documents I had saved. Looking through them, I found records of several large transfers from my account to my parents over the years, amounts far exceeding reasonable rent and utilities. Transfers that had been explained as family emergencies or essential home repairs, but now seemed suspiciously timed with luxury purchases and vacations. My hands shaking, I called Jake and explained the situation. Without hesitation, he offered his spare bedroom for as long as I needed. By midnight, I had packed my essential belongings into my car, leaving furniture and larger items for later if my father kept his word about the 24-hour deadline. That night, instead of celebrating my birthday with family, I sat on Jake's couch eating takeout and coming to terms with the harsh reality that the people who should have loved me the most had been exploiting me for years. My birthday cake remained untouched in my car, a sad reminder of my naive hopes just hours earlier. The first weeks of living independently were a chaotic mix of emotions. Jake's apartment, while spacious by city standards, felt cramped with 2 adults and all my hastily packed possessions. I slept on an air mattress in his spare room surrounded by storage bins and bags of clothes. Each morning I would wake up momentarily, disoriented, the reality of my situation crashing back anew. At work, I threw myself into my new responsibilities with almost manic energy. The longer hours provided both distraction from my personal turmoil and an excuse to minimize my time in the cramped living arrangement. My team noticed the change, but attributed my intensity to enthusiasm about the promotion rather than personal crisis. Apartment hunting quickly became a second job. The rental market in our area was competitive and expensive. Each evening after work, I would visit 2 or 3 properties only to find them either substandard or out of my price range. The security deposits and first-month rent requirements further complicated matters, straining my savings more than anticipated. The first holiday season away from my family brought unexpected waves of grief. Despite years of tense gatherings and performative affection, there was still a painful emptiness in breaking tradition. Jake insisted I join his family for Thanksgiving, where his parents welcomed me warmly. Their genuine interest in my career and life stood in stark contrast to my own family's dismissal, highlighting what healthy family dynamics could look like. During this challenging period, my support network expanded beyond Jake. Lisa from the marketing team invited me to weekly dinner gatherings with other colleagues. Warren, a senior developer in his 50s, took me under his wing professionally, offering both technical mentorship and life advice drawn from his own experiences with family estrangement. The new year brought renewed focus to my career. Freed from the constant criticism and undermining I had experienced at home, my confidence and creativity flourished. The project I managed exceeded performance targets, earning recognition from company leadership. By spring, I was offered another promotion with additional stock options as part of my compensation package. Warren encouraged me to meet with his financial advisor to develop a long-term plan. The advisor helped me understand the value of my stock options and create an investment strategy. For the first time, I began thinking beyond immediate survival to building wealth and security for my future. As the 1-year anniversary of my abrupt eviction approached, my financial situation had stabilized enough to seriously consider buying rather than renting. Property ownership had always been presented as the ultimate mark of success in my family, though the way my journey toward it had unfolded was nothing like I had imagined. The real estate agent showed me 14 properties before I found the one. Unlike the sleek modern condos I had initially considered, this was an older 2-bedroom house in a transitioning neighborhood. The 1970s architecture lacked curb appeal, and the interior needed significant updates. But beneath the dated finishes and overgrown yard, I saw potential. The structure was sound, the location convenient to work, and most importantly, the price was within my budget, with room left for renovations. The buying process was simultaneously exciting and terrifying. Each signature on the seemingly endless stack of documents represented both commitment and accomplishment. When the keys were finally placed in my hand after closing, the emotional impact caught me by surprise. This modest house represented not just shelter, but freedom and self-determination. The months that followed were filled with renovation projects. Jake helped me demolish the avocado green kitchen cabinets and install modern replacements. Warren and his wife offered advice on electrical upgrades and introduced me to reliable contractors for the work beyond my skill level. Weekend painting parties with colleagues transformed dingy beige walls into warm, inviting spaces that reflected my personality. By the time I hosted a small housewarming gathering, the transformation was remarkable. Friends who had seen the before pictures could hardly believe it was the same property. As we raised glasses in the backyard that summer evening, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. In 18 months, I had gone from being unceremoniously evicted on my birthday to owning a home I had renovated with my own hands and with help from people who genuinely cared about me. The following Tuesday, my newfound peace was shattered when I looked up from my desk to see Stephanie standing in the doorway of my office. She looked out of place in her expensive suit among the casual tech company environment. For a moment, I considered pretending not to see her, but curiosity won out over self-preservation. She complimented my workspace with obvious surprise, as if she had expected to find me in some kind of basement coding dungeon rather than a private office with a view. After awkward small talk, she revealed the purpose of her visit. The family had heard about my house purchase through a mutual acquaintance. They were impressed by how quickly I had landed on my feet and thought it might be time to reconnect. I maintained a neutral expression as she extended an invitation to dinner that weekend. My father apparently wanted to discuss important family matters. When I hesitated, she added that our mother missed me and had been asking about me frequently. This emotional leverage, so familiar from our childhood, nearly worked. I found myself agreeing to meet them at a restaurant, a neutral location that would allow me to leave when I chose. That Saturday, I arrived at the upscale steakhouse 10 minutes early, giving myself time to calm my nerves. I dressed carefully in a tailored suit purchased with my latest bonus, a subtle statement of my new financial status. My father and Stephanie arrived precisely on time, my mother trailing slightly behind them like an afterthought. The initial conversation remained superficial, focused on safe topics, like the weather and changes in the neighborhood. My mother asked tentative questions about my house and work. Stephanie mentioned her upcoming wedding plans without extending an invitation. My father remained largely silent, studying me with an appraising look I recognized from business negotiations. It was only after the main course arrived that he revealed his true agenda. "Benjamin," he began, setting down his fork with deliberate precision, "we need to discuss your property acquisition." The formal phrasing immediately put me on alert. He continued with practiced ease, explaining his view that my house should be considered a family asset. After all, I had accumulated the down payment while living in the family home using resources they had provided. In his mind, this created a legitimate family interest in my property. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. The audacity of the claim was staggering. He had evicted me, without notice, forced me to rebuild my life from scratch, and now wanted to claim ownership of what I had accomplished independently. When I found my voice, I asked simply, "You want a share of my house?" "Not a controlling share," he clarified, as if that made the request reasonable. "Just 50% ownership transferred to the family trust. For your own protection, of course." The familiar manipulation techniques were almost comical now that I could recognize them. I declined firmly, explaining that the house was purchased entirely with my own funds earned from my job after I had left their home. Stephanie interjected, suggesting I was being ungrateful for all the support they had provided over the years. My father mentioned potential legal avenues he could pursue, his tone carrying a thinly veiled threat. There was also a reference to his connections at various technology companies and how unfortunate it would be if certain information about my past reached my employers. As the conversation grew increasingly tense, my mother finally spoke up, not to defend me, but to suggest we all take time to consider the situation calmly. It was then that Stephanie revealed, perhaps accidentally, the real motivation behind their sudden interest in my life. My father had recently lost a major case, resulting in significant financial penalties for his firm. The family finances were not as stable as they appeared. I excused myself before dessert arrived, leaving enough cash to cover my portion of the bill and a generous tip. As I walked to my car, I realized I felt neither anger nor hurt, just a profound relief that I was no longer emotionally or financially entangled with these people who happened to share my DNA. The email from Harold Walker and Associates arrived at 7:30 a.m. the following Monday. The formal legal language demanded I respond to the family claim against my property within 10 business days or face litigation. Attached were documents filled with creative interpretations of family financial history, portraying my parents as generous benefactors who had subsidized my adult life rather than the reality of our relationship. Instead of panicking, I forwarded the email to Amanda Rodriguez, a law school classmate I had reconnected with at a tech industry networking event months earlier. Now practicing family law at a respected firm, Amanda had shared stories of similar family financial disputes during our catch-up over coffee. I hoped she might offer some general advice, even though I planned to find an attorney specializing in property law. Amanda called me directly rather than responding to the email. After listening to my situation, she offered to take my case personally, explaining that the intersection of family dynamics and property claims fell squarely within her expertise. Her first instruction was simple: document everything. Over the next week, I gathered financial records dating back to my college graduation. Bank statements showed my consistent rent payments and additional contributions to household expenses. Email exchanges and text messages documented requests for money from family members. Receipts for home improvements I had financed were organized chronologically. Most significantly, I discovered credit inquiries in my name that I had never authorized. During my time living at home, it appeared my father had used my social security number and personal information to apply for loans and credit cards. This potential identity fraud changed the complexion of the case entirely. Amanda helped me file for credit reports and place fraud alerts on my accounts while we documented the unauthorized activity. She explained that this evidence could be used not only to defend against their property claims, but potentially to file a countersuit if necessary. While building our case, I maintained strict communication boundaries with my family, directing all contact through Amanda. This professional buffer provided emotional distance and prevented my father from employing the manipulation tactics that had worked in the past. 2 weeks after the initial threat, we received notice that my father had officially filed a lawsuit claiming partial ownership of my house. The complaint included allegations that I had breached verbal family agreements and misused shared resources. Amanda assured me the claims were legally tenuous, but warned that my father might be counting on the emotional toll of prolonged litigation to force a settlement. The first court-mandated mediation session was scheduled for early April. I arrived with Amanda and our carefully organized evidence. My father brought his own attorney, a longtime colleague from his firm. My mother and Stephanie attended as interested parties, but remained largely silent during the proceedings. The mediator, a retired judge with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency, quickly identified the core issues. As my father presented his version of events, painting himself as a generous parent, now being abandoned in his time of financial need, I maintained a composed exterior despite the internal turmoil his revisionist history provoked. When our turn came, Amanda methodically dismantled his narrative. Bank records demonstrated that, far from being subsidized, I had paid above-market rent while living at home. Documentation of the abrupt eviction contradicted claims of ongoing family support. Most damaging were the unauthorized credit inquiries and accounts opened in my name without my knowledge. The mediator called for a break after reviewing our evidence. During this recess, I noticed my mother in quiet conversation with my father, her expression troubled in a way I had rarely seen. When we reconvened, something had shifted in the family dynamic. My mother requested permission to speak, and in a trembling voice confirmed key elements of my account. Yes, she acknowledged Benjamin had been asked to leave with no notice on his birthday. Yes, he had contributed substantially to household expenses. And yes, she had been aware of financial transactions using his information but had been afraid to question them. Her admission visibly shocked Stephanie and infuriated my father, whose face reddened with each word she spoke. Following this revelation, the mediator recommended the complaint be withdrawn, suggesting that pursuing the matter further would likely result in unfavorable outcomes for my father. After a tense private discussion with his attorney, my father reluctantly agreed to dismiss the lawsuit on the condition that I sign a mutual release of all claims. Amanda advised that the release would prevent me from pursuing the identity theft issues, but would also permanently sever any financial entanglements with my family. Weighing the emotional cost of prolonged legal battles against the clean break the agreement offered, I chose to sign. By that afternoon, the paperwork was filed, and the case was officially closed. As we left the courthouse, my mother approached me alone, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She apologized for not standing up for me sooner and asked if we might speak occasionally in the future. Stephanie lingered awkwardly nearby, her earlier confidence replaced by uncertainty. My father had already departed without a word. I told my mother I needed time, but did not close the door entirely on future contact. With Stephanie, I was more reserved, remembering her active role in the eviction and subsequent property claim. Before we parted ways, she mentioned that her fiancé, Frank, had recently discovered financial irregularities in some business dealings with our father and was reconsidering their relationship as a result. That evening, Jake, Amanda, Warren, and several other friends gathered at my house for an impromptu celebration. As we shared pizza and drinks in my renovated kitchen, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for these people who had become my chosen family. Their support had been unconditional, their advice honest, and their presence consistent during the most challenging period of my life. In the months that followed, I focused on healing the emotional wounds left by years of family manipulation. At Warren's suggestion, I began attending a support group for adults from dysfunctional families. The shared experiences and coping strategies offered there provided validation and practical tools for setting boundaries. Professionally, I continued to thrive, accepting a senior management role that came with additional responsibilities and rewards. My house became a gathering place for friends and colleagues filled with laughter and genuine connections that had been absent in my childhood home. On rare occasions, I would exchange brief civil texts with my mother. She respected my boundaries and never pressured me for more contact than I was comfortable with. From these limited exchanges, and through mutual acquaintances, I learned that my father's legal and financial troubles had worsened, eventually forcing them to sell the family home. Stephanie had postponed her wedding indefinitely, and the relationship with Frank seemed uncertain. This news brought no satisfaction. The collapse of their carefully constructed facade of family perfection felt like the inevitable conclusion to a story long in the making. Whatever veneer of success and unity the Walker family had maintained had been built on unstable foundations of control and conditional love, rather than mutual respect and support. As my 30th birthday approached, I reflected on the journey of the past 2 years. Being kicked out on my 28th birthday had seemed like the end of the world at the time, the ultimate rejection. In retrospect, it was the painful beginning of authentic independence, not just financially, but emotionally and psychologically as well. For my birthday, I hosted a backyard barbecue at my now fully renovated home. Surrounded by people who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide, I realized I had finally created the supportive environment I had always craved. The house that my family had tried to claim was now unquestionably mine, not just legally, but in every meaningful sense. I had made it a home. The healing process after family betrayal is neither quick nor linear. There were still nights when memories of my childhood and the painful rejection would surface, leaving me questioning my worth and my place in the world. The difference now was that I had developed healthier ways to process these emotions rather than suppressing them to maintain family peace. Therapy became an essential part of my journey. My therapist, Dr. Michaels, helped me recognize the patterns of emotional manipulation that had been normalized throughout my childhood. I learned to identify the critical internal voice that sounded suspiciously like my father, always finding fault, never satisfied with achievement. Gradually, I began replacing these destructive thought patterns with more compassionate self-talk. The support group Warren had recommended provided another crucial element of healing. Meeting others who understood the complex grief of family estrangement validated my experiences in ways that even well-intentioned friends could not. Together, we navigated holiday seasons, family-oriented social events, and the awkward conversations with new acquaintances who innocently asked about our families. My professional life continued to flourish, without the weight of family expectations determining my choices. When an opportunity arose to lead a new division focused on accessibility technology, I took it despite knowing my father would have considered it less prestigious than other options. The work proved deeply satisfying, combining technical challenges with meaningful impact for users with disabilities. Gradually, I established new traditions and rituals to replace those lost with my family separation. Sunday brunches with Jake and his partner became a weekly constant. Monthly game nights with colleagues evolved into deep friendships, extending beyond the workplace. Holidays were celebrated potluck style, bringing together various friends who for different reasons were not spending the time with biological family. My relationship with my mother evolved into something tentative, but genuine. Our occasional coffee meetings were initially awkward, filled with careful conversation that avoided deeper issues. Over time, she began to acknowledge the dysfunction in our family and her role in enabling it. While these admissions could not undo the past, they opened the possibility of a different kind of relationship moving forward. Stephanie remained more distant. Her wedding to Frank ultimately did proceed, though, on a much smaller scale than originally planned. I declined the invitation, sending a polite card instead. Through mutual connections, I heard that Frank had established firm boundaries with our father after discovering several attempted financial manipulations. This distance had created ongoing tension in their marriage. As for my father, we had no direct contact since the courthouse. Occasionally, I would see his name in legal publications or hear about him through professional networks. According to my mother, he refused to discuss me, acting as if I had simply ceased to exist once I was no longer useful to his purposes. This complete dismissal, while painful, confirmed that my decision to maintain separation was necessary for my well-being. The second anniversary of my eviction coincided almost exactly with the completion of my final major home renovation project, a deck and landscaped backyard, perfect for entertaining. As I stood surveying the transformation, I was struck by how the house had evolved alongside my own healing journey. What had begun as a neglected property with good bones had become a welcoming, comfortable space, reflecting my personality and values. That evening, hosting a small dinner party for my closest friends, I shared this observation. Amanda, who had become a dear friend beyond her role as my attorney, raised her glass in a toast to homes built on solid foundations, both the physical ones and those we create within ourselves. The conversation turned to how our definitions of family had evolved as adults. Jake spoke about chosen family and the freedom to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Warren and his wife shared their own experiences, creating meaningful connections after relocating far from relatives. Lisa from marketing described how her concept of family expanded after becoming part of a community theater group. Later, after my guests had departed, I sat alone on my new deck, looking up at the stars. The anger and bitterness that had once consumed me had largely dissipated, replaced by a sense of peace and self-assurance I had never known while striving for approval that would never come. I had learned that family could be defined by love, respect, and consistent support, rather than merely by DNA. My 30th birthday celebration the following month was nothing like the disaster of 2 years prior. Instead of being evicted, I hosted a housewarming and birthday combination that filled every room with laughter and conversation. The cake, lovingly baked by Warren's wife, rather than purchased in hopeful anticipation, was cut amid genuine wishes for my happiness. That night I received news that my father had been forced to sell his practice and declare bankruptcy following a series of professional setbacks and lawsuits from former clients. The family home had been sold at a significant loss. While I took no pleasure in their financial troubles, neither did I feel responsible for them. Their problems were the natural consequences of choices and actions taken long before our final falling out. In the quiet aftermath of the party, surrounded by evidence of the life I had built for myself, I reflected on the strange path that had brought me here. Being forced out of my childhood home had been traumatic, but it had also been necessary. Without that painful rupture, I might have remained trapped in patterns of seeking validation from people incapable of providing it. I might never have discovered my own strength or built this community of genuine support. Today, as I look at this home I built from the ground up and the relationships I have cultivated with care, I wonder, is it possible that the doors that close most painfully in our lives are actually invitations to find the places and people where we truly belong? If you have ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal, I would love to hear your story in the comments below. Remember to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need to hear that family is sometimes who we choose, not who we are born to. Thank you for being part of my journey, and may you find peace in whatever path has led you here today.